She was just 6 years old, playing in her grandparents' backyard, when a neighbor's pit bull charged through the fence. It lunged at her face, tearing into her skin. She screamed, and in that moment, her 8-year-old brother Nicholas did something no one expected. He threw himself at the dog, fists flying. They were just kids, two bright, beautiful siblings who still believed the world was safe, that the backyard was their kingdom, and that monsters only lived in bedtime stories. It was a warm afternoon in Cheyenne, Wyoming, the kind of day that smelled like fresh-cut grass and barbecue smoke. 6-year-old Lillian was dancing barefoot on the lawn behind her grandparents' house. Her small fingers clutched around a dandelion she refused to let go of. Every once in a while, she'd blow its white fluff into breeze, laughing as it scattered into the sky. Her older brother, Nicholas, just 8 years old, had always been the quiet one, observant, protective. He wasn't loud or rowdy like most boys his age. Instead, he watched. He watched the clouds shift, the birds land on fence posts, and most importantly, he always watched Lillian, not because he was told to, but because he felt like it was his job. They were more than siblings. They were each other's shadow. Nicholas and Lillian didn't have the easiest life. Their parents worked long hours. Sometimes days passed before they saw their mom, and their dad was often away on construction jobs. So when summer came around, the kids stayed with their grandparents, who lived in a quiet neighborhood tucked between tall trees and wide fences. The backyard was big, surrounded by wooden slats and an old rusted gate that squeaked whenever it moved. It was peaceful, familiar, safe, until the day it wasn't. That afternoon, their grandmother had just handed them 2 cold juice boxes. The sky was cloudless. A slight breeze rustled through the leaves. The world felt so normal, so still, but something felt off. Nicholas had noticed it first, the low growl in the air, faint but undeniable. He turned toward the fence, where beyond the slats, a muscular pit bull stood frozen, its eyes locked onto the children, its body stiff, its ears drawn back. Nicholas had seen that dog before, a neighbor's pet, big, always chained up, the kind that barked at everything. But this time it wasn't barking. It was staring. He didn't say anything at first. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it would turn and walk away. But deep down, something twisted in his stomach. That quiet kind of fear that doesn't scream. It whispers. He walked over to Lillian, who was now on her knees, examining a patch of ladybugs by the fence. He nudged her shoulder. "Let's go inside," he said softly. "Why?" she laughed. "It's nice out. I just think we should go." But it was already too late. In one sudden, horrible moment, faster than Nicholas could react, the old fence rattled violently. A splintered section gave way, and the massive pit bull came charging through like a freight train. Time stopped. Nicholas didn't think. He moved. Instinct took over. Lillian froze. The dog lunged, and the silence of summer afternoon shattered into screams. A snap, a scream, a silence. The kind that doesn't come from quiet, but from shock. The dog's growl had turned into a full-blown roar as it barreled through the broken fence. In one brutal leap, it crossed the yard and tackled her small frame to the ground. She hit the dirt hard. Wind knocked out of her lungs, and then came the pain. Hot, sharp, deep. It tore into her face first. Her cheek, her jaw. She tried to scream, but her voice cracked. Too much fear, too much pain. She felt teeth tear into her neck next. Blood poured from the wound, warm and endless. Her arms flailed. She was too small, too fragile, too helpless. But then, something moved above her. A blur, a shadow, a voice. Nicky! Nicholas didn't hesitate. Not for a second. He wasn't thinking about fear. He wasn't thinking about size. He wasn't thinking about the fact that the dog was twice his weight and covered in muscle. He was thinking about Lillian. He ran at the dog full speed, fists clenched so tight they hurt. He screamed as loud as he could, not words, just a raw, primal sound, and he punched, right in the face. Then again, and again, the dog didn't stop. It turned, growling, blood smeared across its snout, Lillian's blood. It snapped at Nicholas, its teeth missing his chest by inches. He stumbled back, grabbed a plastic rake from the ground, and swung. The rake cracked. The dog roared. Nicholas kept swinging. From inside the house, their grandmother heard the commotion and bolted outside. She screamed. She had never run so fast in her life. She grabbed a broom and joined Nicholas, beating the dog with everything she had. It finally backed off, snarling bloodied, its eyes still locked onto Lillian. That's when Nicholas dropped the rake and threw himself over his sister's body. If it's gonna bite, he thought, it has to go through me first. He covered her with his entire body, whispering, "It's okay. I got you. I got you." The dog finally ran off. It was over, but it wasn't. When paramedics arrived, the scene was chaos. The lawn was torn up, blood soaked into the soil. Lillian was barely conscious. Her face was shredded. Her neck was bleeding heavily. One EMT said later, if the dog had bitten an inch higher, it would have severed her artery. She wouldn't have made it to the hospital. Nicholas wouldn't let go of her. Even as they lifted her onto the stretcher, he clung to her hand. "She's gonna be okay, right?" he asked, his voice trembling. No one answered him right away. Lillian was rushed into emergency surgery. Doctors worked for hours to clean and close the wounds. They counted at least 6 deep punctures, including 1 millimeter from a major artery. Her face was swollen beyond recognition. One eye was blackened shut. Her jaw, possibly fractured. The right side of her face would need multiple surgeries. Nicholas sat outside the OR for 6 hours. He didn't speak, didn't eat, didn't cry. He just waited. When the surgeon came out, he stood up so fast he almost fell. "She made it," the doctor said, but it was close, very close. Days passed, then weeks. Lillian woke up with tubes in her nose and IVs in her arms. The first thing she did when she could speak again was ask, "Where's Nicky?" He was in the next room, curled up in a chair. He hadn't left the hospital. Not once. They brought him in. She cried when she saw him. "So, did he? I thought you were gone," she whispered. "I told you," he said. "I got you." News of the attack spread quickly through Cheyenne. Local reporters interviewed the family. Photos of Lillian in the hospital, her face bandaged, her little hand holding onto her brother's, went viral. The story shocked people, but more than that, it moved them. Everyone had seen stories of dog attacks before, but rarely one where an 8-year-old fought back to save someone else. People started calling Nicholas a hero. He didn't think he was one. "I was just doing what any brother would do," he said. The dog was seized by animal control. Neighbors had complained about it before. Its owner had refused to chain it properly. The broken fence, the same one Nicholas had noticed just days earlier, had been reported but never fixed. There was talk of lawsuits, of negligence, of tragedy, but the family didn't want revenge. They just wanted Lillian to heal, and for Nicholas to stay a kid, not a soldier in a war he never asked for. While Lillian healed on the outside, something else was happening beneath the surface. She became quieter, jumpier. She couldn't sleep through the night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dog's teeth. Nicholas stayed close. He brought her coloring books, watched cartoons with her, slept on the floor next to her hospital bed. But even he couldn't stop the nightmares. One night, Lillian woke up screaming. Nurses rushed in. Nicholas grabbed her hand. "It's okay," he whispered. "He's gone. He's not coming back." She looked at him and asked, "Why did you save me?" He paused, then said, "Because I love you. This is how heroes are born. Not in capes, not on battlefields, but in backyards, in ordinary moments that turn into something unforgettable." One second he was a kid. The next, he was a shield, a warrior, a lifeline. While Lillian healed on the outside, something else was happening beneath the surface. She became quieter, jumpier. She couldn't sleep through the night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dog's teeth. Nicholas stayed close. He brought her coloring books, watched cartoons with her, slept on the floor next to her hospital bed. But even he couldn't stop the nightmares. One night, Lillian woke up screaming. Nurses rushed in. Nicholas grabbed her hand. "It's okay," he whispered. "He's gone. He's not coming back." She looked at him and asked, "Why did you save me?" He paused, then said, "Because I love you. This is how heroes are born, not in capes, not on battlefields, but in backyards, in ordinary moments that turn into something unforgettable. One second he was a kid. The next, he was a shield, a warrior, a lifeline." After the attack, the road to recovery was far from simple. It wasn't just Lillian's physical wounds that needed healing. It was the emotional scars that cut even deeper. Nicholas, too, had been forever changed. His childhood, once carefree and filled with innocent play, now carried the weight of a violent act that he couldn't forget, no matter how much he tried. Lillian's doctors warned the family that psychological trauma will be the hardest hurdle to overcome. Children who've been through violent encounters like this one often develop severe anxiety, fear of loud noises, and a deep mistrust of animals. But what no one expected was a deep bond that grew between Nicholas and Lillian in the wake of that fateful day. Every day, Nicholas stayed by Lillian's side. If she woke up crying from a nightmare, he was there. If she felt afraid of the dark or couldn't go near a dog, he was there. The bond they shared had always been strong, but now it was unbreakable. Nicholas became her protector in ways no one could predict it. As time went on, attention began to shift toward the dog that had attacked Lillian. It was seized by animal control and quarantined, but the questions started to rise. What led the dog to act so violently? Neighbors had known the pit bull, which went by the name Max. He wasn't a puppy, but he wasn't an adult either. He was around 3 years old, and for the most part, he had been harmless. But there had been reports before of Max becoming aggressive. Neighbors complained about his incessant barking and his tendency to growl at children. The most alarming report came from a nearby family who'd seen Max jump the same fence just a month before the attack. They'd told the dog's owner, urging him to secure the fence and prevent the dog from running loose again. But nothing had been done. The dog's owner, a man in his late 40s, was questioned by the police, but he denied responsibility for the attack. He claimed that Max was never aggressive and that the dog had always been well treated. He insisted that the broken fence had been repaired long ago and that no one had told him the dog was dangerous. But the evidence didn't align with his words. Police discovered that Max had a history of being chained up in the yard. While this may have been common for some pet owners, it also meant that the dog had little to no socialization and could have become territorial. It wasn't uncommon for a dog kept isolated like this to lash out when felt threatened or provoked, even if no direct harm was intended. In the case of Max, it was likely that his sudden escape to the weak fence sent him into a heightened state of aggression. When he saw Lillian small and unprotected, he saw a target, and the weeks that followed, the family sought justice. They consulted with lawyers about filing a lawsuit against the dog's owner. Lillian's medical bills were staggering, and the emotional toll on her and Nicholas was immense. They had no idea if the man would be held accountable or whether they could claim compensation for what had happened. As word of the attack spread through the community, reactions were mixed. Some people were quick to defend the dog, saying it had always been harmless, but others were angry. They couldn't understand how the owner hadn't taken the necessary precautions to prevent the incident from happening. Local authorities began to investigate further, and soon, the dog's owner was brought in for questioning multiple times. The question on everyone's mind was, could this have been prevented? But as the investigation unfolded, it was clear that no one could answer that question definitively. There were reports of prior incidents, but no one had truly raised the alarm in a way that could have led to the dog being euthanized or removed from its owner's care. The system, it seemed, had failed to connect the dots in time. In the meantime, Nicholas and Lillian were left to face the aftermath. They didn't understand complexities of the legal process or what justice might look like for them. They only knew that the dog was gone, but the scars would remain forever. What became painfully clear to those around them was that while Lillian needed time to heal, Nicholas was struggling too. He had never spoken about the attack, not to anyone, not even his parents. He kept everything inside, focusing all of his energy on making sure his sister was okay. Nicholas' therapist said he was repressing his emotions. He was bottling up everything inside, trying to hold the weight of his actions alone. He'd never asked for anyone's help. He had simply done what needed to be done. But that wasn't healthy. In therapy, he began to admit what he had done that day. The fear he'd felt, the guilt, the overwhelming feeling that, despite everything, he hadn't been able to protect his sister completely. It was this silent burden that tore at him, and only when he started talking about it did he begin to heal. As Nicholas and Lillian's recovery continued, the community rallied around them. A local GoFundMe page was set up to help cover medical expenses, and within weeks, thousands of dollars poured in from neighbors, strangers, and people who had heard their story. Some of the funds were used to help Lillian get the extensive medical care she needed. The rest went toward funding Nicholas' therapy sessions, which, as his parents realized, would be just as important. As the days went by, they watched their children recover in ways they couldn't have imagined. They weren't just recovering physically, but emotionally, too. Slowly, they began to reclaim the joy that had been taken from them. The carefree smiles, the laughter, the love between siblings. In the years that followed, Nicholas and Lillian became known as symbols of strength and resilience. The attack was something they'd never fully forget, but it no longer defined them. They had each other, and that was more than enough. Nicholas went on to pursue his dreams of working with animals, determined to help others learn about the importance of safe pet ownership and the need for responsible training and containment. Lillian, too, found her own path, determined to overcome the past and use her story to help others who had experienced trauma. But the one thing that would always remain between them, an invisible thread connecting their hearts, was that moment, the day Nicholas had stepped in front of a vicious dog to save his little sister. Time had passed since the attack, months then years, but the bond between Nicholas and Lillian had only grown stronger. The scars on their bodies had faded with each passing day, but the emotional marks left by that fateful day still lingered in quiet moments, in shared glances, and the way they looked out for one another. Nicholas was no longer just Lillian's older brother. He was her hero, her protector, and her best friend. And Lillian was no longer the scared little girl lying in a hospital bed, too afraid to sleep or look at a dog. She had reclaimed her life, her strength, and her voice. Together, they were a testament to the power of love, sacrifice, and the unshakable bond between siblings. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick, but it was real. Their parents watched their children grow and heal with a mix of pride and sorrow. The pride was for the strength Nicholas and Lillian showed. The sorrow came from the deep, unspoken understanding that they could never fully protect their children from the pain of the world, but they could help them navigate it. Together, their mother had tears in her eyes when she said, "What you two did for each other that day, I'll never forget. You saved each other." Nicholas never asked for recognition. He never sought fame or praise. He just did what needed to be done. But years later, when people spoke of the attack, they spoke of him as a hero. And perhaps, for the first time, he let the word sit comfortably within him. He realized that the true measure of a hero wasn't the accolades, but the selflessness, the courage, and the love that drove him to act. What Nicholas and Lillian went through wasn't just about a dog. It wasn't just about a single moment of terror. It was about the power of small actions in the face of life's biggest challenges. That moment, when Nicholas charged the dog with nothing but a rake in his hand, changed everything. But it wasn't the rake that made him brave. It wasn't the dog that made him a hero. It was the simple truth. Nicholas loved his sister more than anything else. And when faced with the unimaginable, his love gave him the strength to protect her, no matter what it cost him. For Lillian, that moment marked the beginning of her recovery. She had learned something powerful, that no matter what happened to her, she wasn't alone. Her brother had saved her, and even when things seemed impossible, she had the strength to move forward, to live again. The attack didn't just affect the family. It shook the entire community, sparking conversations about responsible pet ownership and animal control laws. The story of Nicholas and Lillian reached far beyond the walls of their town, drawing attention from people who had never even met them. In the years following, the local animal control agency tightened regulations and increased public awareness campaigns about dog safety. People took notice, and the story of a young boy saving his sister from a violent dog inspired many to act, not out of fear, but out of compassion and a desire to prevent such incidents from happening again. Nicholas spoke at local events, sharing his story not to boast, but to raise awareness about the responsibility that comes with owning a pet. He knew that the dog wasn't inherently dangerous, but that his upbringing and environment had contributed to his behavior. Through education, he hoped to prevent future attacks and to help others understand that dogs, like people, needed love, care, and training. Lillian, too, became an advocate, speaking to groups of young children about bravery, recovery, and the importance of never giving up. She used her own story to show them that even the most terrifying experiences could be overcome and that they had the power to heal. Just like she had in the years that followed, Lillian and Nicholas grew into young adults. They each followed their passions, but they never stopped looking out for one another. They shared milestones, birthdays, graduations, and even moments of quiet, ordinary joy. But they also carried the weight of that day, the knowledge that, at a young age, they had faced something no one should ever have to face. But the attack never defined them. What defined them was how they chose to respond to it, with love, with resilience, and with determination to protect one another, no matter what. Nicholas never looked at his act of bravery as something extraordinary. To him, it was simple. He had seen his sister in danger, and he had done everything he could to keep her safe. He had done what anyone would do for family. But to everyone else, what he did was extraordinary. He had shown that heroism didn't have to come in the form of a cape or a grand gesture. Sometimes, the greatest heroes are the ones who act in silence, who protect without asking for thanks, and who love unconditionally. For Lillian, that love was everything. It was what helped her heal from the trauma. It was what helped her reclaim her sense of safety. And it was what gave her the strength to grow and thrive. In the end, the story of Nicholas and Lillian isn't just about a dog attack. It's about a brother's love for his sister, about the lengths we go to protect those we care about, and about the power of family. It's a reminder that even in the most terrifying of moments, love can be the thing that makes all the difference. Nicholas was a hero not because of what he did that day, but because he was willing to risk everything for the one person who mattered most. And Lillian was a survivor, not because she had the strength to fight the dog, but because she had the courage to face her fears and rebuild her life, knowing she wasn't alone. Together, they were stronger than the fear that had once tried to tear them apart. If you like our video, like Shar and subscribe our channel.